Sometimes, the light of Christ shines brightest when it bleeds through the cracks of a broken heart. Real people, real stories of hope for the hurting, and triumph over tragedy through faith in Jesus Christ. This is Out of the Grave with Rob and Dave.
Hey, welcome to Out of the Grave with Rob and Dave. My buddy Dave is actually out of town right now, so I'm going to be flying solo on this. I have a friend of mine, Ashley DiFonzo, who I actually work with on the show today. Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Rob.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. We, Ashley and I have talked a lot because I went through a lot of the stuff that I've been through on the first broadcast. And we have, even though she's just a couple years older than my youngest child, which is funny to me, she's been through a lot, and we had a lot in common as far as the physical sufferings and depression and different things like this. So if you want to just kind of, tell us who you are, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah. So as Rob mentioned, my name is Ashley. And Rob and I really connected, working together, talking about mental health and the importance of realizing that and working through that, especially as a Christian. So I've struggled with depression, anxiety, other mental health things since probably junior high, early high school, and then also some physical issues. So that's really where the pain and suffering has come from in my life. Right.
And, I shared, whenever I was sharing my testimony, I started having issues when I was 15. Mm-hmm. Actually, I was in my sophomore year, and people don't really, get how that messes with you, not just mentally. But then you have people that think, you're young and you don't have a job and you have the world by the tail, and they don't understand. I actually told a family member that whenever I was a teenager that I was depressed, and they literally laughed at me. And they said the same thing I just said. You have no job. You have, how on earth can you ever? But teenage depression is a real thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, we can see that whenever we look at suicide statistics and things like that, which is why I think it's so important that we all talk about this, because we both work at Global University, which is a distance education Bible and theology school. And we have a student that had told me at one time that if she had found somebody that was talking about their issues, like some of us do, then she said she probably would have became a Christian a long time ago, because she just thought they were all just painting this picture of, everything is perfect, and, all you have to do is pray. And it's kind of a fine line, because obviously those things are true, but you still, I think it's still really important that you be real.
Yes.
So, yeah. And do you had mentioned before to me that you have at least a couple of friends that you can be real honest with. You want to talk about that for a second? Because I think that's really, really important to have at least one person that you can not just give the I'm fine response, but, literally be honest with.
Yeah, I'm a very reserved person, a very guarded person. And so I'm often not very open about what I go through. And I'm also the counselor therapy friend in my friend group. So a lot of the times I have felt like if I talk about what I'm going through, then it'll just be a burden for them. And I don't want to be a burden for other people. But I do have a select group of people who I can go to and be real with. And that has just helped me. Because when you struggle with depression and anxiety, you're in your head a lot. You think you're crazy. You think you're the only one going through these things. And especially if it's hard to hear or sense the Lord in that time, it's really important to have friends to go to. And without people that I trust, that I can go to, I don't know if I would honestly be sitting here. So it's really important to at least find that one person they might not be able to help you. They might not even experience what you're experiencing, but just somebody who can come alongside you and say, I don't know what you're going through, but I'm here for you. So it's really important. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's also important that people know that we don't expect them to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing is that, that's one thing that my wife had to work through because she couldn't fix it. And my dad was the same way. You know, he here you have, and I don't care if I'm 54, he still texts me and he'll call me babe or whatever, because I'm still his little boy,
Yeah.
and, but he can't fix that. And people have to kind of work through that. But it's so important just knowing that somebody's there.
Yes.
Even if all you can do sometimes is just vent. Because there's, as you know, sometimes there's literally nothing that anybody can do. I mean, short of a divine miracle.
Yes.
Yeah. So you want to just kind of go back to your freshman year of high school. We had talked and you had said that that was the year that something happened that kind of kickstarted some of the issues that you still struggle with.
Yeah. So my freshman year of high school in 2012, my grandma passed away. Very sudden, very unexpected. We did not know it was coming. And that really was the turning point for when my anxiety and depression started. She was my best friend. My identity was rooted in our relationship and what she wanted me to do and just, our connection. So when I lost that, I really lost my sense of identity. And my anxiety just started getting really bad. I couldn't go anywhere without freaking out that something else was going to happen to either my mom or someone else in my family. And that's also when the depression really started again, because my whole world was taken, essentially. And so that was just rock bottom for me. In a sense of, I didn't know who I was. I had anxiety about losing other people. I was depressed because I was just so lost. And that still time heals things, but it doesn't necessarily heal everything. And so that anxiety and depression is still something that is something I struggle with currently.
Right. Yeah, and I think people, especially when we're Christians, it's not that they write it off, but I think a lot of people in trying to help, they're in a better place and this and that and the other. But that was interesting what you said, that it wasn't just a matter of dealing with her being gone, but it was a matter of the fear of losing others as well. And again, when you're young, people just, they don't listen as much because they think, she's a teenager and she's blowing things out of proportion. And so when you can't talk to anybody, and I don't know, hopefully we're speaking into somebody's life right now, but when you can't talk to somebody, then I don't care what age you are, if you're 12 or, if you're 90, then that's tough. I mean,
it was the loneliest season. Oh
yeah. To just carry that, to just keep all that stuff down inside. Yeah.
And people didn't know how to talk to me. I think because everyone, I grew up in a small town, people knew how close we were. And because it was so sudden, people would, say the typical, she's in a better place, or they just wouldn't say anything at all. So that made it even lonelier.
Right. Yeah. And then you have all those questions that you ask yourself. What's wrong with me? And nobody, am I the only one experiencing this? And, yeah. So, and that makes it even rougher, especially when you're so young. Cause I can kind of process stuff. And when I feel it coming on, I can say, okay, well, that's depression. So how do I fight that? But when I was younger, it just, it kind of slipped in the back door. So
my personality was completely altered by that one experience. Yeah.
And people think it's just a matter of not dealing well, but there's so much more to it than that. Yeah. So, tell me, a little bit about your story. I know that you've went through a lot, and that was just kind of the beginning. You said anxiety and depression.
Yes.
which, some people have one or the other. I took a test and it said what I have is called pure depression. I really don't struggle with anxiety, whereas family member that I have, they suffer mainly anxiety, rarely depression. But how do you think that the two of those kind of work together, work against each other?
My case is unique. I have what people would call high functioning anxiety, but I've also experienced debilitating anxiety. So I think depression and anxiety can go hand in hand in the fact that they're both pretty debilitating, but you can also be high functioning with them. So growing up and in high school, they were both very debilitating. By my junior year of high school, I was in so much pain, physically, psychologically, that every day I thought about ending my life. And because every day, yes. I never had a method or a plan, but every day I would just wake up. I couldn't get out of bed. Living was just very painful. And usually depression, they're kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. And so to have both, it was just, I felt very lost.
What was the physical pain from?
The physical pain, I found out the summer after my junior year that I was extremely anemic. So my iron levels, normal people, their levels are like at a 15, and my levels were at a 6.
Wow.
Yes. And that contributed to the low energy, not being able to get up. So not only was it psychological from depression, but it was physical from being anemic. And I ended up having to get an iron infusion from the University of Missouri up in Columbia. And that's kind of the start of my physical issues and suffering. But especially when your anxiety is high functioning, people don't believe you necessarily when you say you have it. Since mine isn't debilitating anymore, I can come to work, I can get things done, I can do my homework and not really have a problem, but the anxiety is still there. So when it's high functioning and again, people don't necessarily believe you or know how to help you, that's also another piece to that.
Right. Yeah. And like we said, it's really important to to know who you can talk to, because certain people they'll try to help, but I don't need, this sounds terrible, but I've had people that would quote Bible verses to me as if I didn't know them.
Yes. Yes.
Well, were you aware that, my dad wasn't used to any of this. Whenever I first told him how I was feeling when I was a teenager, he was silent for a long time. And he just said, have you read your Bible lately? And we kind of joke about that now, but because he really didn't know what to say. Mm-hmm. So talk to me for a second. If you could tell somebody who has somebody in their life, a teenager, a young person, whatever, doesn't necessarily have to be a teenager, that they feel like is experiencing this. I mean, from your perspective, what were you really craving? What would really have helped you whenever you were going through this?
Yeah, for me, I think it was definitely, I was craving somebody validating what I was experiencing, making sure that I was heard, that I was seen. And I really didn't get that. Even at 24, my mom still struggles with the fact that I experience anxiety. I've gotten the Bible verses. I've gotten you just need to have more faith. Don't worry about it. God already has it taken care of.
Or a real Christian doesn't struggle with that, which is the worst. Yes.
And that's definitely not true. We're human.
Oh, it's not even biblical.
No, it is not biblical. So yeah, I definitely think, especially young people, I think they're already afraid to talk about it because it's such a stigma.
Yeah. So
making sure that person is heard, that their experiences are validated.
Right. What were some survival techniques? Because anybody who has been through as much as we have. I mean, you have certain techniques. Like with me, it really helps to see my grandkids. That'll just lift my spirits right up. Or going to a concert with my son, watching a movie with my wife, turning all the lights out and put on the fireplace. There are certain things that I use to combat that. I mean, did you have certain things like your go-to, just to survive? Because I mean, obviously you did. So something must have helped you.
Yeah, the one driving factor that helped me was thinking of my grandma. Thinking, I want to see her again one day. Even though she's gone, I want her to be proud of me. So really, I mean, especially in high school, that's what kept me going, was
Right.
the fact that she's no longer here, but one day I'm going to see her again. And I just need to keep going because there's a reason I'm still here, or else I wouldn't be here. So
Right.
that was my driving factor.
So after the anemia, that wasn't the end, obviously, of your physical struggles. As you kind of progressed, what were some of the other things that you went through?
So my anemia in that situation was the summer of 2014, so right before my senior year of high school. Fast forward to July of 2015, I had some symptoms and we weren't sure what was going on. So I went to the doctor and they diagnosed me with what's called polycystic ovarian syndrome, or we call it PCOS for short. And basically it means that my ovaries are covered in cysts. You're supposed to have an ultrasound. You can clearly see the ovary. Well, they couldn't even see my ovaries because they were just covered in cysts.
Wow.
Yes. And I was 18 at that time, and I was laying on the table and they were doing the ultrasound, and the tech looks at me and he goes, "Well, if you want to have kids one day, you're probably going to struggle. You're probably going to have miscarriages. You're going to have to, have help basically having children. And to add on top of that, there's no cure for PCOS. You just kind of have to live with it."
Right.
And at 18, they really pushed me to have a hysterectomy to avoid those cysts developing into cancer. And I refused. I was 18 and I have my whole life ahead of me to think about, and that's such a big decision.
Right.
So yes, that was right before I went to college.
Wow.
So exactly a month before I started college.
That's crazy to have to face that kind of decision.
Yes.
At that, I mean, it's difficult
Mm-hmm.
at any age, but
Yes.
my goodness. Yeah, whenever, and I'm not sure how much I talked about this, but when we lost our granddaughter,
Mm-hmm.
we were given statistics and if she's born at 23 weeks and we kind of said, well, we don't care about the statistics and, God doesn't care. So we don't care either. So, and it just, it just wasn't meant to be. But if you flip that, I mean, we've both heard so many stories
Mm-hmm.
that, well, the doctor said this, but, a miracle happened, and we've seen that, we've heard about that. And so, I applaud you for taking that stand because, God can perform a miracle there, no doubt. I mean, we don't know what's His will, but I have no doubt that He can do that, and you've probably seen that. So
Yeah, for sure. It really challenged my identity again and who God created me to be. God created women to have children. That's one of the things we're designed to do. So to be told that might not be possible from, a medical point of view, it it really, my faith was definitely tested in that moment. And I know it'll be tested if, Lord willing, one day I'm married and have the opportunity to try to start a family. But yeah.
Yeah. So when you went into college, were you still experiencing physical pain?
Yes.
Okay. So you still have, even to this day, is that right?
Yes.
Physical pain, depression, anxiety. Okay.
Yes.
I know for me, and we've talked about this, it's just a matter of going day by day. It's a matter of not trying to figure out the rest of your life, just kind of taking today for what it is. And I don't mean to keep spirituality out of it, because I've had times where I have, like I've talked about before, I can't remember if it's here, but definitely in my blog, where I gathered a list of Bible verses about healing. And I read those twice a day for 3 months, and the Lord gave me a partial healing in my back. It was one of those times where I felt like I was literally losing my mind. So I don't mean to, discount that as far as the spirituality aspect of it. But you got through your master's, your bachelor's and your master's program pretty quickly. How many years did it take you to do that?
6 years total for bachelor's and master's.
Wow. So that's amazing. So you just kind of went right through there. Yeah. And that's on top of you having the issues and everything.
Yes.
So I think it's a little bit sweeter. It's sweet for anybody. I think it's a little bit sweeter for those who every day is a struggle.
Yes. Yeah.
Whenever you get that. I had some people that said, oh, I'm not going to walk. I don't care. All I want is a piece of paper. I walked.
Same. Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to walk across the stage. I want to be handed that piece of paper. I want to hear my family hoop and holler. So
yes,
yeah. So talk about your daily struggle. How do you get through? If somebody were just to say, I don't have these issues, I don't know how you do it. What's your response?
What really gets me through each day is knowing that hopefully what I experience can help someone else. That I'm not just suffering for the sake of suffering, that even on the really painful days, this week especially has been really painful physically, just knowing that, whatever it's through, that hopefully I can help someone in the process of being in pain.
Right. Yeah. Which I had talked about a little bit with Dave, and a few years ago, I started a Facebook group for Christians who suffer chronic physical and or emotional pain. And people seem to be so glad to have an outlet.
Yeah.
Not only that they, like a haven where Christians could go and they didn't have to worry about theological issues, but where people could be honest about it. And I began to think that, the Lord's brought all these suffering people into my life so I can bless them. Well, that's part of the reason. But then I realized over time that it works both ways, just like in any relationship where you have give and take, and you have one person is feeling really down, the other's up, and then the next day it's the opposite. And I think the Lord sends us people who can definitely help with that.
And it's so important, I think, as Christians, because I think the church as a whole avoids talking about mental health and physical suffering because it's very uncomfortable. It's unnatural from our original design. And I'm extremely passionate about that, knowing, like in Luke, when Jesus, he asked the Lord 3 times to take the pain away, to take what was coming away from him. And obviously it wasn't taken away, but even Jesus asked the Lord to take it away. So I think that really speaks to the human side of who Jesus was. And we can apply that in the church and how we talk about suffering.
Yeah, for some people, there's this huge chasm between talking about these things and being positive and quoting Bible scriptures, and so they think that it's one of these kind of things where if you ignore it, and I that's the point of us doing this show for Dave and I, is to not only reach out to people who aren't Christians and share our stories, but to encourage believers that maybe all they see on social media is the good stuff. People just posting pictures of themselves, on the beach and by their new car and whatever. And I don't get on there and talk about my issues, bad day, depressed. But still, I think it's so important. I do in my blog. I think it's so important that we talk about this, because for some people, and let me know if you've heard this a lot, but it's kind of almost a reverse name it and claim it kind of thing. Like if you, a joke about like, what about Bob, and he says, well, if I say it, then I don't have it, or whatever it was. And it seems like people are like that, doesn't it? I mean, if you say it out loud, then that gives legitimacy to it. So let's just not talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have people have you seen that? Oh
yeah, for sure. My favorite is, you just don't have enough faith. And again, going back to Jesus, asking the Lord for that to be taken away, it was Jesus. He had all the faith that God could do it, and he didn't.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely think we don't talk about it because people say there's power in your words. If you speak it and say that you have it, then that just denies God's ability to work. And I've heard that. But I don't think we should deny that we're experiencing something that's human. That's what makes us human. That's what gives us the ability to connect with other people, is through talking about it. Right.
Yeah. And I think, a huge difference is when people see the peace that we have.
Yes.
Because no matter what you're going through, and even if you have your flip out days, as Christians, the core of our being, we know that it will be okay.
Yes.
Eventually. We don't know if it's going to be tomorrow, next week, or when we get to heaven. But I think that's so important that we not only express that part of it too, but people see that too.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's one thing that a lot of people don't have, is they don't have that inner core of peace.
Yes.
So as you went through college, you had said, because I know you sent me part of your story, and you had said, after discovering what type of polyp nearly killed me, it was sent to Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic. Could you talk about that time?
Yeah. So during the spring semester of my freshman year, I was in intense physical pain. It was probably one of the most depressing seasons since my junior year of high school, where I was at a very low point and didn't want to live, basically.
Yeah.
So from January to April of 2016, I was so depressed and in so much pain that I could not experience peace, the joy of the Lord, none of that. It felt like a desert and a wasteland. And so April 1st, 2016, it was right after Easter. My pain was so bad, I ended up in the ER. And we laugh about it now. At the time, it wasn't funny, but when I got into the ER, the doctor obviously wanted a urine sample. And I couldn't do that because I didn't eat or drink anything in almost 72 hours. Just because the polyp was about to burst inside my stomach. And so at the time, the doctor assumed I was pregnant. And the doctor was like, do you want your mom to step out of the room so you can actually tell us what's going on? And I said, no, because that's not what's going on. So they sent me home with some nausea medicine. They said, just take this, it'll be fine. Well, it wasn't fine. I end up back in the ER. A nurse finally does a CT scan, And she's like, you have a polyp. It's bursting. We got to get you into surgery. So within 45 minutes, I was in emergency surgery.
Wow.
I should have died. I lost a ton of blood. I woke up not breathing. They had to put me on oxygen. It was truly a miracle. And when I got out of surgery and the doctor talked to us, he said, this polyp, I've never seen it before. He had been a surgeon for 20 plus years. He'd only heard about it in textbooks.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they sent it to Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, and it was a type of polyp. It's called Peutz-Jeghers. And basically it's a genetic mutation. And so it makes you 80% more susceptible to cancer. So when we found that out, I spent the summer after that incident in April undergoing genetic testing to see if this is really what I had. They sent me to an oncologist. I was always the youngest person in the waiting room. That was pretty difficult, especially how people would look at me with just pity and sadness because they were usually older. And so that's how I spent that summer, was genetic testing and visiting an oncologist. And praise God, that's not what it was. I don't have the genetic mutation, but still to this day, they have no idea how I got it. Wow. They have no idea where it came from. No one else in my family had it. It truly was, an attack of the enemy.
Yeah.
Because it just medically cannot be explained.
Wow.
So that I really learned, God is the God of the mountaintops and the good season and the good times, but you really get to know God in the valley. Right. I like to tell people, God is also the God of the bathroom floor. When I was lying on my bathroom floor, begging God to heal me, telling him I didn't want to live if I was going to be in pain. But that's where I experienced God in the most incredible way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He becomes so much more visceral, so much more real, I think. I'm not yet to the point where I can thank the Lord for my pain.
Yeah.
But I have said out loud that I think that my pain keeps me closer to the foot of the cross.
Yes.
Than I would be if I wasn't.
I agree.
And I don't know, and you can't really explain it. Only God knows. What I had said before, and I just say that because I don't mean to keep saying it, but I want people to know that I know that I'm repeating myself. I'm aware of that. But, God goes to great lengths to build his kingdom.
Yes.
And I came to that realization after a season of fasting and prayer. And I just didn't understand a lot of things. It didn't make any sense. And again, I was almost to the point of feeling like I was losing my mind. Mm-hmm. I walked in one time and it was Eli, a guy that we know. He's here at Global, but he was laughing. He was laughing so heartily and so big. And I was like almost to the point where I felt like my mind was slipping. And I was just like, I don't know how somebody just, can just sit there and laugh so easy, because I felt so tormented.
That's where I was at. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really, it's kind of a scary place. Because there's still that part of you that says, act normal, act normal, act normal. Because, I would tell myself, well, most people don't care anyway. So, just pretend to be this person. And that's really sad whenever people feel like that they have to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I would encourage people again to find somebody that you can express yourself to. Dave and I have said that they could even message our show or whatever. So yeah, we don't know what God's going to do with all your pain, but we're believing that the Lord's going to do something with it. Do you have any specific things that you can say, well, this is one or two things or whatever that I have learned besides what you have said in these really, really difficult times?
People would ask me, how can you be so devoted to God if you suffer so much? And it's taken me many years to I don't think anyone can ever answer that question. We don't know why we experience so much suffering,
Right.
but I've given up on asking why, because I don't think I'm going to get a direct answer.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily need to know why, but what keeps me focused on the Lord and ministry and serving Him is remembering that God doesn't cause the pain. God is not a God of pain. John 10:10 is very clear that that's the enemy. The enemy steals, kills, destroys. The enemy wants to turn pain and suffering into, well, look at that. God doesn't love you. He's not healing you. What's wrong with you? But being able to say, no, that's not the case. God loves me. God could heal me for whatever reason. He's choosing not to. But remembering that God, He's the source of life. He's the source of joy. It's not contingent on how I feel that day. If my relationship with God was based on how I feel, it'd be pretty rough because most days, I don't feel so great. And so just remembering that God doesn't cause it. God will allow it for whatever reason. We don't know, but God does not cause what how we suffer.
Right. Yeah. And I think that over time, you kind of develop, more strength, not only in the midst of a battle, but things that, times that a lot of people don't think about. When you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep and you're in pain, and it's really easy to let that overwhelm you, But I think that after a while, the Lord really gives us this attitude of, I can't give up. Mm-hmm. And there have been times I told my family, I don't know, it was 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 now. It was a Monday. And, Mondays are bad enough anyway. Mm-hmm. And I always said, nothing good can come from Mondays. There's like a ceiling on how good it can be, right? Which is probably not true. But I was so tired and in so much pain and so miserable. And I just told my family, I said, I'm done. And they're like, what do you mean you're done? And I said, no, I'm not talking about suicide. I'm just, I don't know. I just, I literally, I feel like I can't do this anymore, and I want people to know that just because, we sit here and talk about this doesn't mean that we have all the answers, and, doesn't mean that there's still not times like that.
Yeah.
You told me that you don't sleep very well either. No. And so the fatigue adds to the anxiety, adds to the depression, adds to the physical struggles. Mm-hmm. And it really gets to be so much sometimes, doesn't it?
It's exhausting. Every day is exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. And people, that's one thing that it's, it's so important that people realize is how exhausting it is just to carry.
Yes.
That load. People can't figure out why you're tired all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you a story.
Exactly. I'm like, I just have a few things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Well, this has been really good. I wonder if you don't mind if I could ask you to pray for that person out there that maybe got to the point where we talked about, where they said, man, I think this is too much. I just, there's a line there, and they don't, it's really, really hard for them to realize that, that the Lord has given them strength. It's easy to quote Bible verses to them, but when it comes down to that moment,
yes,
that's tough.
Yeah.
So, if you wouldn't mind speaking, can you just take a minute maybe to talk to that person?
Yeah.
And then pray for them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to pray.
Okay.
Lord, just thank you for this opportunity to connect with Rob and those who are watching right now. Lord, you see us. You see us in our pain, in our joy. You see us in our best and our worst. And I pray right now for whoever is listening that they don't know where you are, Lord. They can't hear you. They can't experience your presence or your joy. I pray that right now you would just become real to them, Lord, that in their moment of exhaustion or questioning, that you would give them evidence that you hear them, Lord, because you hear us and you see us. Lord, Isaiah 55, it says that nothing returns to heaven empty. Everything we experience is for a purpose. No matter how painful it is, Lord, you have a purpose for it. So right now I pray that you would just remind whoever this is, Lord, that what they are experiencing will not return to heaven empty, Lord, but will return to heaven with a purpose. I pray that you would be with anyone who feels alone, Lord, or who is very overwhelmed, or lift that burden from them. Your yoke is easy, Lord, your burden is light. I pray that you would just give someone who needs a reason, you'd provide them with that reason, Lord. However it is, whatever you need to do to work in their lives, I pray that you just give them a reason, give them your reason, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I really believe that this is going to speak into somebody's life. I'm believing that there's going to be somebody, maybe young person, maybe not, that is going to see this. And I think it's so important that we validate what somebody is going through.
Yeah.
You know, you have somebody that is, again, being told that either they don't have enough faith or whatever. You know, I had a guy here in the building, actually, he's not here anymore, but he said, man, he said, you still doubt. I said, oh, do I? And he goes, yeah. He said, all you have to do is just really believe. And I was like, really believe? He said, oh, really? That's what I've been. That's what. And I wanted to say, you know how many different ways Jesus healed people?
Yes.
You know? I mean, some he touched, some he didn't even get there, some he just said it out loud. And, you know, the one guy he spit in the dirt and made mud. And yeah, just because it worked for you, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
Doesn't mean that it's going to work for everybody, you know. This really believe. And it's almost kind of a letdown for people, isn't it? Whenever they gather around you and they're praying those amazing, you know, theological seminary prayers, I call them.
Yes.
And they're believing, and then they look into your eyes afterwards and they expect to see this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're almost, you almost feel like kind of a stooge to say,
yes.
Yeah, dude, I feel exactly the same. Yes. Yeah. And I hate that. So yeah, no, I anybody who's listening, I mean, I would encourage you to message the Out of the Grave Facebook page. So thank you very much, Ashley, for joining us and for sharing your story. I know that you're like me, you kind of keep that hidden a lot. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, to all our listeners, the people who watch, you know, you can catch us on YouTube, on Spotify, on anchor.fm. We are on the GUR. We made a joke about that last week with Tony. He's the guy that runs the radio station. That's at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays. You can find that on either Gospel Rockin' Radio or the Live 365 app. So thank you for joining us, and you guys have a blessed day.